chapter 13 so far. So if you haven't caught up to the rest of the story, the other videos are on my channel. I'll forget to link them, but if you ask, I'll link them. And it is a sequel to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I probably should also link below, which I had read that book first. So yeah, we're like halfway through this one. So if you haven't seen those, go back, stick again. I'm going to get started on chapter 13 of The Restaurant at the End of the Universe by Douglas Adams. Like I said, sequel to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, so you should hear that one first. Where was I? Chapter 13. Ford Prefect bounded up to the bridge of the Heart of Gold. Trillian! Arthur! He shouted. It's working! The ship's reactivated! Trillian and Arthur were asleep on the floor. I'm getting cozy. Don't mind me, guys. Where was I? Oh yeah. Come on, you guys. We're going. We're off, he said, kicking them awake. Hi there, guys, twittered the computer. It's really great to be back with you again. I can tell you, and I just want to say that... Shut up, said Ford. Tell us where the hell we are. Frogstar World B, and man, it's a dump, said Zaphod, running onto the bridge. Hi guys, you must be so amazingly glad to see me that you can't even find words to tell me what a cool fruit I am. What? said Arthur blearily, picking himself up from the floor, not taking any of this in. I know how you feel, said Zaphod. I'm so great. Even I get tongue-tied talking to myself. Hey, it's good to see you, Trillian, Ford, Monkey Man. Hey, computer. Hi there, Beeblebrox. I don't know what that voice was. Whatever, I'm making them up as I go. Okay. Hi there, Beeblebrox. Sir, sure is an honor to... Shut up and get us out of here. Fast, fast, fast. Sure thing, fella. Where do you want to go? Anywhere, doesn't matter, shouted Zaphod. Yes, it does, he said again. We want to get to the nearest place to eat. Sure thing, said the computer happily, and the massive explosion rocked the bridge. When Zarnawoop entered a minute or so later with a black eye, he regarded the 4 wisps of smoke with interest. Chapter 14. 4 inert bodies sank through the spinning blackness. Consciousness had died. Cold oblivion pulled the bodies down and down into the pit of unbeing. The roar of silence echoed dismally around them, and they sank at last into a dark and bitter sea of heaving red that slowly engulfed them, seemingly forever. After what seemed an eternity, the sea receded and left them lying on a cold, hard shore. The flotsam and jetsam of the stream of life, the universe, and everything. Cold spasms shook them. Lights danced sickeningly around them. The cold, hard shore tipped and spun and then stood still. It shone darkly. It was a very highly polished, cold, hard shore. A green blur watched them disapprovingly. It coughed. Good evening, madam, gentlemen, it said. Do you have a reservation? Ford Prefect's consciousness snapped back like elastic, making his brain smart. He looked up woozily at the green blur. Reservation, he said weakly. Yes, sir, said the green blur. Do you need a reservation for the afterlife? Insofar as it is possible for a green blur to arch its eyebrows disdainfully, this is what the green blur now did. Afterlife, sir, it said. Arthur Dent was grappling with his consciousness, the way one grapples with a lost bar of soap in the bath. Is this The afterlife, he stammered. Well, I assume so, said Ford Prefect, trying to work out which way was up. He tested the theory that it must lie in the opposite direction from the cold, hard shore on which he was lying, and staggered to what he hoped were his feet. I mean, he said, swaying gently, there's no way we could have survived that blast, is there? No, muttered Arthur. He had raised himself onto his elbows, but it didn't seem to improve things. He slumped down again. No, said Trillian, standing up. No way at all. A dull, hoarse, gurgling sound came from the floor. It was Zaphod Beeblebrox, attempting to speak. I certainly didn't survive, he gurgled. I was a total goner. Wham bang, and that was it. Yeah, thanks to you, said Ford. We didn't stand a chance. We must have been blown to bits. Arms, legs, everywhere. Yeah, said Zaphod, struggling noisily to his feet. If the lady and gentleman would care to order drinks, said the green blur, hovering impatiently beside them. Kerpow splat, continued Zaphod. Instantaneously zonked into our component molecules. Hey, Ford, he said, identifying one of the slowly solidifying blurs around him. Did you get that thing of your whole life flashing before you? You got that too, said Ford. Your whole life? Yeah, said Zaphod. At least I assume it was mine. I spend a lot of time out of my skulls, you know. He looked around him at the various shapes that were at last becoming proper shapes instead of vague and wobbling, shapeless shapes. So, he said. So what? Said Ford. So here we are, said Zaphod hesitantly. Lying dead. Standing, Trillian corrected him. Standing dead, continued Zaphod, in this desolate restaurant, said Arthur Dent, who had got to his feet and could now, much to his surprise, see clearly. That is to say, the thing that surprised him was not that he could see, but what he could see. Here we are, continued Zaphod doggedly, standing dead in this desolate 5-star, said Trillian. Restaurant, concluded Zaphod. Odd, isn't it? Said Ford. Yeah. Nice chandeliers, though, said Trillian. They looked about themselves in bemusement. It's not so much an afterlife, said Arthur, more a sort of après-vie, which is pretty much an afterlife. But the chandeliers were, in fact, a little on the flashy side, and low-vaulted ceiling from which they hung would not, in an ideal universe, have been painted in that particular shade of deep turquoise, and even if it had been, it wouldn't have been highlighted by concealed mood lighting. And this is not, however, an ideal universe, as was further evidenced by the eye-crossing patterns of the inlaid marble floor, and the way in which the fronting for the 80-yard-long marble-top bar had been made. The fronting for the 80-yard-long marble-top bar had been made by stitching together nearly 20,000 Antarian mosaic lizard skins, despite the fact that 20,000 lizards concerned had needed them to keep their insides in. Okay. A few smartly dressed creatures were lounging casually at the bar or relaxing in the richly colored body-hugging seats that were deployed here and there about the bar area. A young Vaiherd officer and his green steaming young lady passed through the large smoked glass doors at the far end of the bar into the dazzling light of the main body of the restaurant beyond. Behind Arthur was a large curtained bay window. He pulled aside the corner of the curtain and looked out at the bleak and dreary landscape, gray, pockmarked, and dismal. A landscape which, under normal circumstances, would have given Arthur the creeping horrors. These were not, however, normal circumstances, for the thing that froze his blood and made his skin try to crawl up his back and off the top of his head was the sky. The sky was. An attendant flunky politely drew the curtain back into place. "All in good time, sir," he said. Zaphod's eyes flashed. "Hey, wait a minute. You dead guys," he said. "I think we're missing some ultra-important thing here, you know? Something somebody said and we missed it." Arthur was profoundly relieved to turn his attention from what he had just seen. He said, I said, it was a sort of après. Yeah, and don't you wish you hadn't, said Zaphod. Ford, I said it was odd. Yeah, shrewd, but dull, perhaps it was. Perhaps, interrupted the green blur, who had been by this time resolved into the shape of a small, wizened, dark-suited green waiter. Perhaps you would care to discuss the matter over drinks. Drinks? Cried Zaphod. That was it. See what you miss if you don't stay alert? Indeed, sir, said the waiter patiently. If the lady and gentleman would care to take drinks before dinner. Dinner? Zaphod exclaimed with passion. Listen, little green person, my stomach could take you home and cuddle you all night for the mere idea. And the universe, continued the waiter, determined not to be deflected on his home stretch, will explode later for your pleasure. Ford's head swiveled slowly toward him. He spoke with feeling. Wow, he said. What sort of drinks do you serve in this place? The waiter laughed, a polite little waiter's laugh. Ah, he said, I think sir has perhaps misunderstood me. Oh, I hope not, breathed Ford. Oh, the waiter coughed a polite little waiter's cough. It is not unusual for our customers to be a little disoriented by the time journey, he said. So, if I might suggest, time journey, said Zaphod, Ford, and Trillian simultaneously. You mean this isn't the afterlife? Said Arthur. The waiter smiled, a polite little waiter smile. He had almost exhausted his polite little waiter repertoire, and would soon be slipping into his role of a rather tight-lipped and sarcastic little waiter. Afterlife, sir, he said. No, sir. And we're not dead, said Arthur. The waiter tightened his lips. Aha, he said. Sir is most evidently alive. Otherwise I would not attempt to serve, sir. In an extraordinary gesture, which it is pointless attempting to describe, Zaphod Beeblebrock slapped both his foreheads with two of his arms and one of his thighs with the other. Hey guys, he said, this is crazy. We did it. We finally got to where we were going. This is Milliways. Milliways, said Ford. Yes, sir, said the waiter, laying on the patients with a trowel. This is Milliways, the restaurant at the end of the universe. End of what? Said Arthur. The universe, repeated the waiter very clearly and unnecessarily distinctly. When did it end? Said Arthur. In just a few minutes, sir, said the waiter. He took a deep breath. He didn't need to do this, since his body was supplied with the peculiar assortment of gases it required for survival from a small intravenous device strapped to his leg. There are times, however, when, whatever your metabolism, you have to take a deep breath. Now, if you would care to order your drinks at last, he said, I will then show you to your table. Zaphod grinned 2 manic grins, sauntered over to the bar, and bought most of it. Chapter 15. The restaurant at the end of the universe is one of the most extraordinary ventures in the entire history of catering. It had been built on the fragmented remains of, it will be built on the fragmented remains, that is to say, it will have been built by this time, and indeed has been. One of the major problems encountered in time travel is not that of accidentally becoming your own father or mother. There is no problem involved in becoming your own father or mother that a broad-minded and well-adjusted family can't cope with. There is no problem about changing the course of history. The course of history does not change because it all fits together like a jigsaw. All the important changes have happened before the things they were supposed to change, and it all sorts itself out in the end. The major problem is quite simply one of grammar, and the main work to consult in the matter is Dr. Dan Street Mentioner's Time Traveler's Handbook of 1001 Tense Formations. It will tell you, for instance, how to describe something that was about to happen to you in the past before you avoided it by time jumping forward 2 days in order to avoid it. The event will be described differently according to whether you are talking about it from the standpoint of your own natural time, from a time in the further future, or a time in the further past, and is further complicated by the possibility of conducting conversations while you are actually traveling from one time to another with this intention of becoming your own mother or father. Most readers get as far as the future semi-conditionally modified, sub-inverted, plagal, past subjunctive, intentional before giving up. And in fact, in later editions of the book, all the pages beyond this point have been left blank to save on printing costs. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy skips lightly over this tangle of academic abstraction, pausing only to note that the term future perfect has been abandoned since it was discovered not to be. To resume, the restaurant at the end of the universe is one of the most extraordinary ventures in the entire history of catering. It is built on the fragmented remains of an eventually ruined planet which is Wheel, haven't be, enclosed in a vast time bubble and projected forward in time to the precise moment of the end of the universe. This is, many would say, impossible. In it, take guests willing on take their places at table. Guests take their places at table and eat, willing on eat sumptuous meals while watching the whole of creation explode around them. This, many would say, is equally impossible. You can arrive in on when, for any sitting you would like, without prior late for when reservation, because you can book retrospectively, as it were, when you return to your own time. You can have on book Haventa for when, presuming returning Wenta retro home. It's fucking gibberish, but okay. This is, many would now insist, absolutely impossible. I feel like I just casted a spell. At the restaurant, you can meet and dine with Mayan meet on con with dining on when a fascinating cross-section of the entire population of space and time. This, it can be explained patiently, is also impossible. You can visit it as many times as you like, Mayan on visit, re-on visiting, and so on. So for further tense correction, consult Dr. Street Mentioner's book, and be sure of never meeting yourself because of the embarrassment this usually causes. This, even if the rest were true, which it isn't, is patently impossible, say the doubters. All you have to do is deposit 1 penny in a savings account in your own era, and when you arrive at the end of time, the operation of compound interest means that the fabulous cost of your meal has been paid for. This, many claim, is not merely impossible, but clearly insane, which is why the advertising executives of the star system of Vastablon came up with this slogan. If you've done 6 impossible things this morning, why not round it off with breakfast at Millway's, the restaurant at the end of the universe? Chapter 16. At the bar, Zaphod was rapidly becoming as tired as a newt. His heads knocked together, and his smiles were coming out of sync. He was miserably happy. "Zaphod," said Ford, "while you're still capable of speech, would you care to tell me what the photon happened? Where have you been? Where have we been? Small matter, but I'd like it cleared up." Zaphod's left head sobered up, believing his right to sink further into the obscurity of drink. "Yeah," he said, "I've been around. They want me to find a man who rules the universe, but I don't care to meet him. I believe the man can't cook." His left head watched his right head saying this and then nodded. "True," it said. "Have another drink." Ford had another pan-galactic gargle blaster, the drink which has been described as the alcoholic equivalent of a mugging, expensive and bad for the head. Whatever had happened, Ford decided he didn't really care too much. "Listen, Ford," said Zaphod, "everything's cool and fruity." "You mean everything's under control?" "No," said Zaphod, "I do not mean everything's under control. That would not be cool and fruity. If you want to know what happened, let's just say I had a whole situation in my pocket, okay?" Ford shrugged. Zaphod giggled into his drink. It frothed up over the side of the glass and started to eat its way into the marble-top bar. A well-skinned sky gypsy approached them and played electric violin at them until Zaphod gave him a lot of money and he agreed to go away again. The gypsy approached Arthur and Trillian, sitting in another part of the bar. "I don't know what this place is," said Arthur, "but I think it gives me the creeps." "Have another drink," said Trillian. "Enjoy yourself." "Which?" said Arthur. "The two are mutually exclusive." "Poor Arthur, you're not really cut out for this life, are you?" "You call this life? You're beginning to sound like Marvin. Marvin's the clearest thinker I know. How do you think we make this violinist go away?" The waiter approached. "Your table is ready," he said. Seen from the outside, which it never is, the restaurant resembles a giant glittering starfish, beached on a forgotten rock. Each of its arms housed the bars, the kitchens, the force field generators which protect the entire structure, and the decayed hunk of planet on which it sits, and the time turbines which slowly rock the whole affair backward and forward across a crucial moment. In the center sits the gigantic golden dome, almost a complete globe, and it was into this area that Zaphod, Arthur, Ford, and Trillian now passed. At least 5 tons of glitter alone had gone into it before them, and covered every available surface. The other surfaces were not available because they were already encrusted with jewels, precious seashells from Centragonus, gold leaf, mosaic tiles, lizard skins, and a million identifiable embellishments and decorations. Glass glittered, silver shone, gold gleamed. Arthur Dent goggled. "Wowee," said Zaphod. "Sapu! Incredible," breathed Arthur. "The people, the things, said Ford Prefect quietly, "are also people. The people, resumed Arthur. The other people. The lights, said Trillian. The table, said Arthur. The clothes, said Trillian. The waiter, they thought they sounded like a couple of bailiffs. The end of the universe is very popular, said Zaphod, threading its way unsteadily through the throng of tables, some made of marble, some of rich ultra-mahogany, some even of platinum, and at each a party of exotic creatures chatting among themselves and studying menus. People like to dress up for it, continued Zaphod. Gives it a sense of occasion. The tables were fanned out in a large circle around the central stage area, where a small band were playing light music. At least 1,000 tables was Arthur's guess, and interspersed among them were swaying palms, hissing fountains, grotesque statuary. In short, all the paraphernalia, common all. Sorry, my dyslexia is acting up hard right now. In short, all the paraphernalia common to all restaurants where little expense has been spared to give the impression that no expense has been spared. Arthur glanced around, half expecting to see someone making an American Express commercial. Zaphod lurched into Ford, who lurched back into Zaphod. Wowie, said Zaphod. Oh, said Ford. My great-granddaddy must have really screwed up the whole computer works, said Zaphod. I told it to take us to the nearest place to eat, and it sends us to the end of the universe. Remind me to be nice to it one day. He paused. Everybody's here, everybody who was anybody. Was, said Arthur. At the end of the universe, you have to use the past tense a lot, said Zaphod, 'cause everything's been done, Hi, guys, he called out to a nearby party of giant iguana lifeforms. How did you do? Is that Zaphod Beeblebrox? Asked one iguana of another iguana. I think so, replied the second iguana. Well, doesn't that just take the biscuit? Said the first iguana. Funny old thing, life, said the second iguana. It's what you make it, said the first, and they lapsed back into silence. They were waiting for the greatest show in the universe. Hey, Zaphod, said Ford, grabbing for his arm, and on account of the third pan-galactic gargle blaster missing, he pointed a swaying finger. There's an old mate of mine, he said. Hot block Desiato. See the man at the platinum table with the platinum suit on? Zaphod tried to follow Ford's finger with his eyes, but it made him feel dizzy. Finally, he saw. Oh, yeah, he said. Then recognition came a moment later. Hey, he said, did that guy ever make it mega big? Wow, bigger than the biggest thing ever, other than me. Who's he supposed to be? Asked Trillian. Hot Black Desiato, said Zaphod in astonishment. You don't know, you never heard of Disaster Area? No, said Trillian, who hadn't. The biggest, said Ford. The loudest. The richest, suggested Zaphod. Rock band in the history of. He searched for the word. History itself, said Zaphod. No, said Trillian. Zowie, said Zaphod. Here we are at the end of the universe, and you haven't even lived yet. Did you miss out? He led her off to where the waiter had been waiting. All this time at the table, Arthur followed them, feeling very lost and alone. Ford waded off through the throng to renew an old acquaintance. Hey, Hot Black, he called out. How are you doing? Great to see you, big boy. How's the noise? You're looking great. Really very, very fat and unwell. Amazing. He slapped the man on the back and was mildly surprised that it seemed to elicit no response. The pan-galactic gargle blaster swirling around inside him told him to plunge on regardless. "Remember the old days," he said. "We used to hang out, right? The Bistro Illegal, remember? Slim's Throat Emporium, the Evil Drum, Boozerama. Great days, eh?" Hot Black Desiato offered no opinion as to whether they were great days or not. Ford was not perturbed. "And when we were hungry, we'd pose as public health inspectors. You remember that? And go around confiscating meals and drinks, right? Till we got food poisoning. Oh, and then there were the long nights talking and drinking in those smelly rooms above the Cafe Lou in Gretchen Town at New Bedell. And you were always in the next room trying to write songs on your ajutar. And we all hated them. And you said you didn't care. And we said we did because we hated them so much." Ford's eyes were beginning to mist over. "And you said you didn't want to be a star," he continued, wallowing in nostalgia, "because you despised the star system. And we said, Hadra and Sulidru, and me, that we didn't think you had the option. And what do you know now? You buy star systems." He turned and solicited the attention of those at nearby tables. "Here," he said, "is a man who buys star systems." Hot Black Desiato made no attempt either to confirm or deny this fact, and the attention of the temporary audience waned rapidly. "I think someone's drunk," muttered a purple bush-like being into his wine glass. Ford staggered slightly and sat down heavily on the chair facing Hot Black Desiato. "What's that number you do?" he said, unwisely grabbing out a bottle for support and tipping it over into a nearby glass. As it happened, not to waste a happy accident, he drained the glass. "That really huge number," he continued. "How does it go? Borm, badur, something, and in the stage act you do, it ends up with this ship crashing right into the sun, and you actually do it." Ford crashes his fist into the other hand to illustrate this feat graphically. He knocked the bottle over again. "Ship, sun, wham, bang," he cried. "I mean, forget lasers and stuff. You guys are into solar flares and real sunburn. Oh, and terrible songs." His eyes followed the stream of liquid glugging out of the bottle onto the table. Something ought to be done about it, he thought. "Hey, you want a drink?" he said. It began to sink into his squelching mind that something was missing from this reunion, and that the missing something was in some way connected with the fact that the fat man sitting opposite him in the platinum suit and the silvery hair had not yet said, "Hi, Ford," or "Great to see you," after all this time, or in fact anything at all. More to the point, he had not yet even moved. "Hot Black," said Ford. A large, meaty hand landed on his shoulder from behind and pushed him aside. He slid gracelessly off his seat and peered upward to see if he could spot the owner of his discourteous hand. The owner was not hard to spot on account of his being something of the order of 7 feet tall and not slightly built with it. In fact, he was built the way one builds a leather sofa, shiny, lumpy, and with lots of solid stuffing. The suit into which the man's body had been stuffed looked as if its only purpose in life was to demonstrate how difficult it was to get this sort of body into a suit. The face had the texture of an orange and the color of an apple, but here the resemblance to anything sweet ended. "Kid," said a voice which emerged from the man's mouth as if it had been having a really rough time down in his chest. "Yeah," said Ford conversationally. He staggered back to his feet again and was disappointed that the top of his head didn't come further than the man's body. "Beat it," said the man. "Oh, yeah," said Ford, wondering how wise he was being. "And who are you?" The man considered this for a moment. He wasn't used to being asked this sort of question. Nevertheless, after a while, he came up with an answer. "I'm the guy who's telling you to beat it," he said, "before you get it beaten for you." "Now listen," said Ford nervously. He wished his head would stop spinning. "Settle down and get to grips with the situation. Now listen," he continued. "I am one of Hot Black's oldest friends," and he glanced at Hot Black Desiato, who still hadn't moved as much as an eyelash, and said Ford again, wondering what would be a good word to say after "and." The large man came up with a whole sentence to go after, and he said it. "And I am Mr. Desiato's bodyguard," it went, "and I am responsible for his body. I am not responsible for yours, so take it away before it gets damaged." "Now wait a minute," said Ford. "No minutes," boomed the bodyguard. "No waiting. Mr. Desiato speaks to no one." "Well, perhaps you'd let him say what he thinks about this matter himself," said Ford. "He speaks to no one," bellowed the bodyguard. Ford glanced anxiously at Hot Black again and was forced to admit to himself that the bodyguard seemed to have the facts on his side. There was still not the slightest sign of movement, let alone keen interest in Ford's welfare. "Why?" said Ford. "What's the matter with him?" The bodyguard told him. Alright, we're gonna cut it here, and I will read more for you later. Your boy's getting sleepy. Alright, so namaste, I love you guys, and I will catch you on the next one.